They fired her in front of a waiting room full of strangers. Not quietly, not behind a closed door. Right there, under fluorescent lights that hummed like exposed nerves, with a row of plastic chairs full of veterans who had learned what humiliation sounded like. "You're done for the night," Dr. Andrew Collins snapped. "Clock out, before you make another mess." Laura Mitchell froze, one hand still wrapped around the mop handle. The bucket trembled slightly as dirty water sloshed against the rim. Somewhere nearby, a heart monitor beeped. Slow, indifferent. The kind of sound that kept going no matter who got hurt. She didn't look up right away. She had learned not to. Around her, the emergency department of Harborview Veterans Hospital kept breathing. Shoes squeaked. A gurney rattled past. A man with a Vietnam veteran cap coughed into a paper mask and stared at the floor. No one stepped in. No one ever did. "I was just cleaning the spill," Laura said. Her voice was low, hoarse, like it had been sanded down by years of smoke and silence. Blood tracked from trauma, too. Collins laughed once. Sharp, joyless. "You don't decide what matters here." He tugged at the cuff of his white coat, pristine, untouched. "I save lives. You clean up after us. Stay in your lane." A nurse nearby avoided Laura's eyes. Another pretended to check a chart that didn't need checking. The security guard shifted his weight, uncomfortable, but said nothing. He had learned the hierarchy. Everyone had. Laura nodded. Slowly. Too slowly for Colin's taste. She turned the mop back toward the darkened hallway, her left leg dragging just enough to notice. A limp most people mistook for weakness. The ache in her hip flared, deep and familiar, like an old warning flare buried under bone. As she moved, Collins muttered, not quite under his breath, "Unbelievable. They'll hire anyone these days." Laura heard him. She always heard everything. What no one in that room saw was the way her jaw tightened, or how her fingers, rough and cracked from chemicals, adjusted their grip with unconscious precision. Muscle memory, not from mopping floors, from holding a scalpel steady while someone else screamed. If anyone had bothered to look at her eyes in that moment, they might have noticed something unsettling. Not anger, not shame. Calculation. And the quiet certainty that tonight was not going to end the way anyone expected. Laura pushed the bucket into the supply hallway and let the door swing shut behind her. The noise of the ER dulled instantly, replaced by the low mechanical breathing of the building itself. Ventilation. Pipes. The distant clang of an elevator bell. She leaned her forehead against the cool metal shelf and closed her eyes for half a second longer than she should have. The pain in her hip surged, sharp and electric, then settled into its usual grind. She welcomed it. Pain kept the memories from getting loud. The supply room smelled like bleach and cardboard, stacked boxes of gloves, gauze, saline bags she wasn't supposed to touch. Laura lowered herself onto an overturned crate with care, exhaling through her teeth as her leg protested. 45 years old, she thought, and already moving like an old woman. She reached into the pocket of her oversized blue jumpsuit and pulled out the notebook. Worn leather. Bent corners. No name on the cover. Inside, The handwriting was tight and precise. Dates, times, drug dosages, mistakes that no one else had noticed because no one ever noticed her. Heparin pushed too fast in bed 4. A broken sterile field in trauma 2. A missed drop in pressure that would have killed a man if it hadn't corrected on its own. She wasn't keeping notes out of spite. She was keeping them because the system didn't care who bled as long as the paperwork looked clean. The door cracked open. Laura. The voice belonged to Nancy Parker, a trauma nurse in her late 50s, grey hair pulled tight, eyes tired but kind. "You okay in here?" Collins was out of line. Laura slid the notebook back into her pocket without looking up. "I'm fine." Nancy hesitated, then stepped inside, lowering her voice. "Inbound medevac just got called in. Training accident up north. Multiple critical." She searched Laura's face, like she was trying to see something behind it. "You should take 5. Get some water." Laura stood carefully, testing her weight. Her expression didn't change. "I'll mop the hallway by trauma 1. Blood dries fast. Nancy frowned. "You don't have to prove anything." Laura met her eyes then. Just for a second. Something old flickered there. Something that made Nancy's breath hitch without knowing why. "I'm not proving," Laura said quietly. "I'm preparing." Over the intercom, a calm female voice cut through the building. "Code Blue. Trauma 1. 2 minutes out." Laura picked up the bucket. Her grip was steady. Too steady. As she stepped back into the light, the familiar itch returned to her fingers. Not fear, not anger. The ghost of a scalpel, waiting to be real again. The double doors burst open like a breached dam. Cold air rushed in with the stretcher, sharp and metallic, carrying the smell of rain, fuel, and blood. Paramedics shouted vitals over one another, their voices frayed. Male, early 20s. Blunt force trauma to the chest. BP 60 over 40, and dropping. The gurney rattled as it crossed the threshold, wheels squealing, monitors screaming in uneven bursts. The soldier's face was pale beneath the grime, eyes half open, unfocused, lips stained dark red. Too young. Always too young. Laura flattened herself against the wall as they rushed past, mop bucket tucked close. She didn't need to see the chart. She saw the way his neck veins stood out, thick and tense. She saw the shallow rise of his chest, uneven, like something inside was fighting him. Her pulse quickened, not in panic, but in recognition. Her mind was already moving faster than the room. Inside Trauma 1, Dr. Andrew Collins took control loudly. Too loudly. "Get him on the monitor. Cut the uniform. I want imaging now." He snapped his gloves on with a sharp flick, jaw tight, eyes darting. A nurse tried to speak. He cut her off with a raised hand. Authority performed, not owned. Laura stood just outside the glass doors, mop forgotten at her side. Through the window she watched Collins hesitate at the bedside, stare at the ultrasound screen, then shake his head like he could will clarity into existence. The monitor spiked, then dipped. The tone shifted. "Wrong. All wrong." "Pressure's crashing," someone yelled. "We're losing him." Laura's fingers curled around the mop handle until the plastic creaked, ventricular rhythm chaotic, no effective output. The pericardium filling fast. She could see it without touching him. Tamponade. Simple. Deadly. Fixable. If someone knew what they were looking at. Collins barked for a needle, his voice sharp with strain. Probably a collapsed lung. Decompress now. Laura's breath caught, her jaw set. You can't shock pressure. You can't needle blood off a heart. The soldier's head rolled slightly, eyes finding the window by accident. Finding her. For half a second, through glass and noise and fluorescent glare, their eyes locked. There it was. The look. "Help me." The mop slipped from Laura's hand and clattered to the floor. No one noticed. The monitor screamed louder. Time collapsed into seconds. Laura took one step forward, and the past stepped with her. Clear. Collins's voice cracked as he raised the paddles. The word landed wrong in the room, thin and desperate. The defibrillator charged with a rising whine that set teeth on edge. A nurse flinched. Another looked away. The soldier's chest lay still, slick with blood and rainwater, rising only because someone was forcing air into him. "No," Laura said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The word carried weight, dense and absolute, like a command dropped from altitude. Collins didn't look up. "Get out," he snapped, assuming the voice belonged to a confused orderly. "This is a sterile field." Laura stepped through the doors. The smell hit her all at once. Blood, sweat, fear. Her boots crossed the red line on the floor without hesitation. She moved past the crash cart, past the flailing hands, straight toward the bed. "You!" Collins turned, face flushing as he recognized her. "What the hell are you doing in here?" "You're the janitor. Get out before I have security drag you. He has cardiac tamponade," Laura said. The room stilled, not silent, just held. Her voice had changed. The rasp was gone. What replaced it was calm, cold, precise. Look at his neck veins. Look at the pulse pressure before it dropped. You missed the window. Electricity won't fix this. Collins laughed, sharp and panicked. You don't know what you're talking about. Laura didn't argue. She reached for the instrument tray. Her eyes scanned metal with muscle memory that made her fingers itch. Scalpel, retractor, clamps, familiar as breathing. "Security!" Collins shouted, backing away. "Get her out now." Two orderlies appeared at the door, uncertain. Laura didn't look at them. She looked at the nurse by the monitor, a woman in her 50s whose hands were shaking. "Watch the rhythm," Laura said. "He's not gone yet." The monitor flatlined. A long, unforgiving tone filled the room. "Time of death," Collins said quickly, like he could end it by naming it. "Not yet," Laura said. She lunged. The scalpel flashed under the lights as she mounted the step stool. Hands grabbed her arms. She tore free with a sharp twist that left one orderly gasping. The blade touched skin. "Stop her!" Collins screamed. Someone else shouted, "Wait!" The first cut was clean, deliberate. Blood welled dark and hot. Laura didn't hear the yelling anymore. The room narrowed to inches, to ribs, to the truth under bone. She had been here before, and she wasn't going to let him die. Retractor. Laura's voice cut through the chaos, low and unyielding. It wasn't a request. It was an order that landed in the nervous system before it reached the ears. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the older nurse stepped forward on instinct and slapped the metal into Laura's waiting hand, her own fingers slick with sweat and blood. Laura cranked the ribs apart with controlled force. Bone protested. The sound was wet and ugly. No anesthesia, no ceremony. The pericardial sac bulged into view, purple and tense, stretched to the point of rupture. There it is, she thought, not with relief, but with grim certainty. The thing that had been killing him while everyone argued. Scissors. The word came out steady. Her hands did not shake. She nicked the sack. Just enough. The pressure exploded outward, a dark rush of blood spilling free, splattering her face, her jumpsuit, the floor. Someone gagged. Someone cursed. The monitor flickered, confused, then screamed again. Internal paddles, Laura said. She slid her gloved hand into the chest cavity and closed her fingers around the heart. It was warm, heavy, still. For a fraction of a second, memory threatened to break through. Sand, heat, rotor wash, screaming over gunfire. She crushed it down. "Come on," she whispered. "Not to the room, not to God, to him. Stay with me." She began the rhythm. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Hard enough to matter, gentle enough not to tear. Blood seeped between her fingers from a nicked ventricle. She ignored it. "Charge to 10, she said. The nurse handed her the paddles with trembling hands. Laura placed them directly on the heart muscle. Clear. This time, the word belonged to her. The jolt ran through the body. The heart fluttered, twitched, then again. A beat. Another. The monitor leapt. Green lines spiking upward, like something clawing its way back. "He's back," someone breathed. Laura didn't look up. She clamped the bleeder with practiced precision, tied a suture as if the world outside the wound did not exist. 20 minutes passed in compressed silence, orders given, executed, pressure stabilized, tubes placed, damage controlled. When she finally stepped down from the stool, the room felt unreal. Too bright, too quiet. The soldier was alive. Laura pulled off her gloves and let them drop. Her hands were steady, her breathing slow. Then she felt it. The crash, adrenaline draining like a tide going out. She turned toward the door, already reaching for the mop. Behind her, no one moved. No one knew what to say to the woman who had just raised the dead. "You're under arrest." The words cut through the aftershock like a blade. Laura stopped with her hand on the doorframe, fingers still smeared with drying blood. The room had not finished processing what had happened, but Andrew Collins had. His face was pale, jaw clenched, eyes burning with something uglier than fear. "You assaulted me," he said loudly, already performing for the room. "You interfered with a medical procedure. You cut a patient without authorization." 2 security guards moved in, hands hovering near her arms. They hesitated, confused by the blood, the monitors still beeping steadily behind them. One of them swallowed hard. "Doc, the patient, is alive despite her," Collins snapped. "Because my team stabilized him after she attacked me." Laura turned slowly. Her movements were careful now, like someone walking on ice. "You froze," she said. Not angry, not loud, just factual. You were about to shock a heart that was drowning. He would have died. Collins laughed, brittle. "You hear this? She's delusional, talking like some kind of war hero." He looked at the guards. "Get her out, now." Hands closed on Laura's arms, firm, professional. She did not fight them. She looked past Collins, past the nurses avoiding her eyes, to the soldier on the bed. Ethan Brooks. His chest rose and fell. Slow. Steady. That was enough. As they pulled her toward the door, the television in the waiting area flickered to life. A news anchor's voice spilled into the hallway, polished and somber. "Tonight marks 4 years since the Bagram airfield incident, a tragedy that claimed the life of Lieutenant Emily Collins." Laura felt the air leave her lungs. On the screen, an old photo appeared. A young woman in flight gear, smiling, confident, alive. Behind her, a phone camera clicked on. Andrew Collins stood 10 feet away, recording, his expression shifting from rage to recognition, to something like triumph. "Laura Mitchell," he said softly, almost reverent. "The butcher of Kandahar." Her name spread through the room like smoke. "You should be in prison," he whispered, tapping the screen. "And now the whole world gets to see what you really are." Laura's grip tightened around the mop handle she had never let go of. Outside, sirens began to wail, growing louder by the second. This time, they weren't for the soldier. They were for her. Laura didn't take the elevator. Elevators trapped you. Corners killed you. She turned for the stairwell, boots hitting concrete hard, the echo sharp and hollow as she descended. Her hip screamed with every step, white hot, the old shrapnel grinding like broken glass. She welcomed it. Pain was honest, panic lied. Behind her, the hospital erupted, shouting, radios crackling, the sound of authority waking up. She burst out into the alley, rain slicking the pavement, the smell of garbage and diesel thick in the air. She leaned against the brick wall and breathed through her teeth, slow and controlled. In, out, the way she had learned when noise meant death. Her phone vibrated. Then again. Then it wouldn't stop. She looked down. Notifications stacked so fast they blurred. "Is this you? Oh my God, oh my." They found her. The butcher. The screen filled with a shaky vertical video. Her face, blood smeared across it. Her hands holding a scalpel. Her voice raised, distorted by chaos. No context, no heartbeat returning, no life saved. Just a story people already wanted to believe. Inside, Andrew Collins was already talking. She could picture it. The posture, The injured wrist he didn't have. The careful words. Victim. Threat. Unstable. A dangerous woman hiding in plain sight. The narrative locking into place. Laura slid down the wall until she was sitting on the cold ground. Rain soaked into her jumpsuit. Her hands trembled for the first time, not with fear, but with exhaustion. 4 years of hiding undone in 4 minutes of video. Across the street, a security light flicked on. Somewhere close, a police radio barked. She pushed herself up, muscles protesting, and moved, limping. Fast enough. As she turned the corner, she glanced back once at the hospital, its windows glowing warm and false. Inside, a young man slept with a heart she had pulled back from silence. That mattered, even if no one else ever said it. Laura disappeared into the dark, carrying the weight of a truth that had never been safe to tell. And somewhere above the noise, beyond the sirens, the past began to catch up. The city learned her name before dawn. Screens glowed in dark living rooms. Phones buzzed on nightstands. A headline rolled across cable news in white block letters, urgent and damning, framing the image exactly the way Andrew Collins had wanted. A bloodied woman, a scalpel raised, a doctor shouting. The caption did the rest. Rogue janitor attacks surgeon. Fugitive on the run. In the hospital lobby, Andrew Collins stood beneath studio lights, his arm wrapped in a sling he didn't need, voice trembling on cue. It was terrifying, he told the cameras. We were doing everything we could when she snapped. She kept talking about the desert, about war. He swallowed, eyes shining. If security hadn't intervened, the patient would be dead. No one mentioned the heartbeat. Up in the ICU, machines whispered and clicked. Ethan Brooks lay pale but alive, chest rising in a steady rhythm. Beside his bed stood a man who did not speak to reporters. General Daniel Harper, 60 years old, iron straight despite the cane at his side, stared at the monitor as if committing its pattern to memory. He had watched men die. He knew the difference between chaos and control. A nurse hovered nearby, twisting her hands. They're saying she attacked the doctor, she ventured, careful. Harper didn't look at her. What did you see? The nurse hesitated. Then she straightened. I saw Dr. Collins freeze, she said quietly, and I saw that woman take over like she'd done it 1,000 times. Harper nodded once. In a private office down the hall, he closed the door and made a call he hadn't wanted to make in years. Old numbers, quiet voices, questions that didn't sound like questions. I need everything, he said. Raw footage, logs, who touched what and when. On the screen before him, a paused frame caught Laura Mitchell mid-motion. Not wild, not frantic, focused, absolute. Harper felt something cold settle into place. Across the city, Laura limped through a rain-soaked industrial block, breath shallow, fever beginning to crawl under her skin. She didn't know yet that someone was finally looking for the truth, only that the hunt had begun. And this time, it wasn't just for her. The memory came back with the smell first. Burnt fuel, hot metal, dust so fine it coated the back of the throat and stayed there. Laura sat on the edge of the narrow cot in her basement apartment, lights off, phone buzzing itself to death beside her. The room around her dissolved as the past pushed in, loud and merciless. Bagram Airfield, August. Heat pressing down like a physical hand. 110 in the shade, and there was no shade. Laura stood outside the canvas trauma tent in desert fatigues, helmet off, sweat running into her eyes. "Where's my bird?" she shouted over the roar of a departing transport. 10 mics out, a sergeant yelled back. Took fire on extraction. VIP on board. VIP. The word landed heavy. It always did. When the Black Hawk came in, it didn't glide. It slammed. Skidded across the tarmac, trailing smoke. Medics ran before the rotors stopped. They pulled the pilot first. Lieutenant Emily Collins, 24, flight suit soaked dark at the neck, where shrapnel had found the one gap in her armor. Laura knew before they reached the table. She still took the lead. Orders snapped. Airway, pressure, lights. The monitors stayed silent. Flat. Emily's eyes stared past her, already gone. "She's been down too long," her second said quietly. "We need to move on." Before Laura could answer, the tent flaps tore open. Senator Robert Collins stormed in, cameras right behind him. Clean, furious, desperate. "That's my daughter," he shouted. "Do something, now!" Laura blocked the monitor with her hand. "She's gone," she said. "I'm sorry." The silence that followed was total. Then the senator leaned in, close enough that she could smell his cologne over the blood. "You didn't even try," he hissed. "That's what I'll tell them." The inquiry came fast. Records changed. Witnesses reassigned. Laura became the story they needed. Reckless, burned out, high on painkillers she never took. Sitting in the dark now, Laura opened the small tin box beneath the floorboard. Inside lay a tarnished silver star and a photo of Emily, smiling, alive. "I tried," Laura whispered to the empty room. Outside, sirens wailed again, and the past finally caught up to the present. General Daniel Harper watched the footage alone the first time. The office lights were off, the city a smear of rain and glass beyond the window. The security video played without sound, high definition, merciless. He saw his son's body crash through the doors. He saw the spike of panic ripple through the room. He saw Andrew Collins hesitate, hands hovering where decisions should have been. Then he saw Laura Mitchell step into frame. She did not look like a janitor. Her movements were economical, terrifyingly calm. The way she displaced Collins wasn't an attack. It was a correction, a transfer of command. Harper leaned forward as the thoracotomy unfolded, the cut clean, the timing exact. He watched her hands cradle his son's heart like something sacred, something borrowed from the edge of oblivion. Harper exhaled slowly. He had seen this before, on sand, under fire. This was what competence looked like. He rewound, frame by frame. He noted the moment Collins pulled out his phone. Not during danger. After. Always after. The door behind him opened quietly. "Sir," his aide said, voice tight. Hospital IT just came forward. The footage wasn't lost. Collins ordered it deleted. Harper's jaw set. And the backup. Secured. Good. Downstairs, Senator Robert Collins arrived, flanked by suits and smiles, already shaping the story. Andrew stood beside him, pale, wounded in all the right ways. They were rehearsed, confident. Men who believed the world still bent. Harper rose, cane tapping once against the floor. He felt the familiar click inside him. The moment when patience ended. "Find her," he told his aide, "before the police do. Quietly. She's hurt." Across town, Laura's fever climbed. She stumbled through a construction site near the waterfront, vision blurring, the world tilting. Concrete dust filled her lungs as she collapsed behind a stack of insulation, shivering despite the heat burning under her skin. When a voice spoke her name, she thought it was another memory. Laura. She forced her eyes open. Standing there, framed by a flashlight beam, was Nancy Parker, and behind her, tall and unyielding even with a cane, stood General Daniel Harper. "This isn't over," Harper said softly. For the first time that night, Laura believed him. The atrium of Harborview Veterans Hospital filled before the cameras did. Glass walls caught the morning light and threw it back in hard angles, too bright, too clean. Reporters clustered shoulder to shoulder, murmuring, checking phones, hungry. Hospital staff lined the upper balconies, silent, drawn by instinct more than orders. At the center podium, Senator Robert Collins adjusted his tie with practiced ease, the expression of a man about to be vindicated. "My friends," he began, voice rich and steady, "we live in dangerous times." He spoke of safety, of broken systems, of a troubled woman hiding in plain sight. Beside him, Andrew Collins stood stiff in a fresh white coat, arm in a sling that drew sympathy without asking for it. Then the doors at the back of the atrium opened. The sound was not loud, just decisive. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-word. Walking down the center aisle was General Daniel Harper in full dress uniform, medals heavy on his chest, every step measured. At his side walked Laura Mitchell. Not in a blue jumpsuit. She wore a borrowed uniform that fit her like it had been waiting years for her shoulders. Her hair was pulled back clean. Her face was pale, eyes clear, posture unbroken. She did not limp. "Security," the senator snapped, smile cracking. "Arrest that woman." Harper raised one hand. The guards froze. Laura stepped to the podium. She did not look at the senator. She looked past the cameras, at the nurses, the veterans, the people who had watched her scrub their floors without ever seeing her. "My name is Laura Mitchell," she said. 4 years ago, I was destroyed to protect a lie." Behind her, the screen flickered to life. The trauma footage rolled. Clear, unedited. Andrew Collins freezing, Laura taking command, a heart returning to rhythm. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The image changed again. Flight logs, a signature, a 45-minute delay. "You killed your daughter," Laura said softly, and the words landed like a verdict. The senator's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time in years, the truth stood in full light, and it did not blink. Laura did not stay for the shouting. As military police moved in and cameras erupted in flashes of white, she stepped away from the podium and let the noise collapse behind her. Justice, when it finally arrives, is rarely quiet. It shakes rooms. It breaks careers. It leaves no space for celebration. Laura walked down the long hallway toward the ICU, boots echoing softly, the weight she had carried for years finally loosening its grip. Ethan Brooks was awake when she entered, pale, weakened, alive. Machines whispered around him, steady and faithful. He turned his head when he sensed her, eyes unfocused but searching. "Mum," he murmured, confused, half dreaming. Laura went to his side and took his hand. It was warm, stronger than before. The rhythm beneath her fingers was real, earned. She did not correct him. She did not explain. She only squeezed once, gentle, grounding. "Rest," she said quietly. "You're safe now." She left without applause, without interviews, without looking back. By afternoon, her uniform hung folded on a chair, returned but no longer needed. The world would argue over her name, her past, her choices. She had made peace with that. Power, she knew now, did not come from titles. It came from action taken when no one else moved. Weeks later, she boarded a bus headed east, a small bag at her feet. Detroit waited. An underfunded clinic, broken equipment, people who needed help more than headlines. The kind of place where a steady hand mattered more than a reputation. Some heroes rise in boardrooms, others rise on battlefields, and some spend months cleaning floors while watching a broken system from the shadows, waiting for the moment they are needed. If this story meant something to you, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with 3 simple words. Unsung heroes rise.